On bottom line viewers, it's Mitch here. We're finally here. It's Super Bowl 54, Super Bowl LIV, Super Bowl LIV, whatever you're calling it, Super Bowl. It's here. Super Bowl 2020. The time we've all been waiting for. The game we've all been waiting for all season long. This is the time you get out. You go out with your friends. You watch the game. You come here on the Bottom Line View. You live stream it. You have some fun with us. And you have some fun with people that usually don't even watch football. You have fun with other sports fans that maybe are casual NFL fans, or you have fun with just your friends and have a good time, man. Because the Super Bowl is here, and the Super Bowl is not only an event where it's just for the football fans, it's for the culture, it's for the world. It is a big stage full of superstars, and this game this year is going to be awesome. It's the Chiefs, it's the Niners, it's Andy Reid and Kyle Shanahan, two of the best, most inventive offensive play callers in the NFL today. It's Jimmy Garoppolo, Mr. Handsome, versus Patrick Mahomes, Mr. MVP of last year and the future of the quarterback position. And then we have, of course, a great defense versus a great offense. We have superstars all over the field, from Nick Bosa on defense or Chris Jones for the Chiefs versus George Kittle and Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. There are a lot of superstars in this game. There are a lot of fantastic matchups. There's a great coaching matchup. And I'm going to break it down all here in this preview. This is going to be as extensive a preview as you will find here on the internet, on TV, anywhere. This is going to be the most extensive preview. I promise you it's going to be full of stats. You're going to be bombarded with information, so make sure you get that popcorn ready, you get some food, maybe get a drink, because we're going to be here, and I'm going to break it down. Offense, Kansas City's offense versus San Francisco's defense, San Francisco's offense versus Kansas City's defense. It's going to be a fun one. Before we do get into the extensive breakdown of Super Bowl LIV or Super Bowl LIV, make sure that you do Gronk spike the like button. And for you Chief and Kittle fans, you guys can also hit that like button as well. If you want to say Kittle spike it, Kelsey spike it, whatever, just hit the like button, guys. And then you can also subscribe to the Bottom Line View if you are new, if you're just tuning in for the first time, guys. I promise you, this channel is dedicated to the NFL, and I will say that there is nobody that puts more effort into giving you guys these game previews than I do. I promise you that. 100%. I might not always be right, but in terms of the effort, it's always 100% there. And what I always say is, take the information. Don't always take the pick, but look at the analysis. What did I say? Take it into the grasp. Formulate it through what you think the game's going to be like, and then say, you know what, he made a point here, he made a point here. That adds up to this conclusion. That's the main thing I want you guys to get here. So if you are betting on the game, planning on betting on the game, I wouldn't 100% take my advice as being like, okay, this guy's 100% accurate, because nobody is. Everybody will have a different opinion on the game, but I will give you the information to hopefully be accurate, and I'll also give you my opinion based on the information. That's the best that I can do. Also, comment your opinion. If you're watching this live, guys, get in that comment section. Let me know what you think about this game. Who do you think is going to win? Do you think it's going to be the Chiefs? Do you think it's going to be the Niners? Let me know after the fact if you're watching this not live, if you're watching this on the rerun. Make sure you're in that comment section. Let me know your opinion. Is it the Niners that's going to win? Is it the Chiefs that's going to win? And not only your opinion or the pick, but also, okay, why are they going to win? Why are the Chiefs going to win? Why are the Niners going to win? Let me know in the comment section below, and we will get to the comments in between the breakdowns of each side of the ball, because there's a lot of information here, and I don't want to be bypassing information for comments. So if you're watching this later on, you could pick whether you want to listen to the comments or listen to the game analysis, whatever you want to do, but it's up to you guys. So there we go. We're going to get into the game now. I'm excited. All right, so Super Bowl 54, Super Bowl LIV. It is the Chiefs, the 49ers. Chiefs are -1.5 in this game, so they are favored in this game, and they've been favored since the game came out, and since the line came out, since Vegas really said, you know, we think the Chiefs are the better team. Right away, that was the analysis. I believe it was a little bit higher than this to start. I think it was like 3. I could be wrong there, and then it went down to 1.5. This game is basically flip a coin in terms of who's going to win. I don't remember a Super Bowl quite like this where it's been so even in terms of people picking one team or the other. I don't think there's really a decisive edge for either team being selected as going to be the winner, being predicted as the winner. Even if a majority has been wrong in the past, there's always been a bigger majority. Like the last couple of years, for example, I think New England the last couple of years was always the majority. Even though they lost to the Eagles, I think they were still the majority in that game of people picking them. And just going back over the years, I don't remember a game. I think maybe the Patriots and the Seahawks was maybe the closest to something we had where it was like 50-50. You know, you were on the Patriots or you were on the Seahawks. This game is truly the same way where I think we have two really talented football teams that I think could both easily win this football game. And that's the way I see it right off the top. I see it being a close game. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. There is an opportunity for it to be a blowout. What I mean by that is, even though I think most likely, I think if these teams play 100 times, it's a close game 90 times, but I think there are 10 times where the game gets out of hand for either side, and that's not a decisive edge saying, oh, 49ers could blow out the Chiefs or Chiefs could blow out the Niners. I think that there's a chance based on these two teams being very explosive and being very good in terms of when they get the momentum, they ride that momentum and they're unstoppable. So if either team gets that momentum and it comes in a bunch, like in a big bunch, then this game could become a blowout for either team, even though these teams aren't totally one is better than the other in that regard in terms of that drastic. You know what I mean? I think there's a chance for a blowout, but the chance of the blowout is small. But it's an opportunity. See, some games in the past, I didn't think there was a chance for a blowout for either team. You know, like I think Patriots-Eagles, I said I don't think this game's going to be a blowout either way. You know, there's been games like Patriots-Seahawks or there's been certain games where you could see the blowout happening, but in certain other games, it's been like, this is going to be a one-score game, no doubt. This game's most likely to be a one-score game, but it might be a blowout if one of these teams gains the advantage. And I would say I would lean to this game being a 49ers blowout over a Chiefs blowout, and the reason is because the 49ers defense, if they figure out Mahomes and they're after Mahomes all game long, that is the opportunity for the blowout more so than the offensive team having the blowout over the defensive team, because that's typically how it works in Super Bowls, aka Seahawks, Broncos, back in the 80s, over and over again in the 90s. The team that really was more balanced or had the better defense typically came out with the blowout over the team that had the great offense, but it's more likely to be a close game than anything else. All right, so the general information about this game, it is being played in Miami, Florida, if you've been sleeping under a rock. Demi Lovato will be doing the national anthem, and the halftime show will be J-Lo and Shakira. Let me know what you guys think of that halftime show. I think we've had enough time to think about it. I think it's going to be entertaining. I'm not the biggest fan of either artist, but it could be fun. Joe Buck and Troy Aikman and Aaron Andrews will be on the call. Aaron Andrews on the sideline, of course. Joe Buck and Troy Aikman. Let me know if you guys like that team for the game. Fox has the game, of course, the broadcast. Fox is personally my third favorite of all of the broadcasts, but I do like Joe Buck and Troy Aikman. They're a solid team. I don't think they're the greatest. I would prefer NBC or CBS, but you know, I'm okay with Fox. The last time these two teams played, Kansas City won 38-27. They have obviously never matched up in a Super Bowl before, these two franchises. They have never had a Super Bowl with two red teams facing off versus each other. Kansas City, 49ers, two primary red teams. That's kind of a stat that's floating around on the internet, and I find it kind of interesting, but that's interesting. Maybe it's the year of the red teams. Never has a Super Bowl had two quarterbacks with a higher winning percentage. Jimmy Garoppolo, Patrick Mahomes, obviously early in their career, but no two quarterbacks have combined for a higher winning percentage in their career than these two guys in a Super Bowl matchup. So these guys win, and they win often. This is the first Super Bowl appearance for the Chiefs in 50 years, and the Niners are also trying to be the third team to win 6 Super Bowls. Now, to the trends. Bill Vinovich is the referee. The Chiefs are 10-6 in games with Bill Vinovich as the primary referee when he's been part of the officiating crew, and while the Niners are actually only 6-6 with Vinovich as the ref. Now, that could slightly lean because the Chiefs have been just better over the years than the 49ers. I don't know what the recent totals are or how they played this season with Vinovich as the referee, but nonetheless, over the last 12 to 16 games, the Chiefs are 10-6, 49ers are 6-6. Vinovich is one of the best refs in the league, even though that's not very hard to do in the NFL today. The Niners are 5-0 against the spread this season when they're underdogs. The 49ers are 5-0. I don't know if I said the Chiefs are, but the 49ers are 5-0 versus the spread this season when they're underdogs. Interesting because I think the 49ers may have started early in the season, underdogs, more so than later in the season, as everyone knew they were a very good team. I think at least one of those games that they were underdog was the Saints game, if I'm not mistaken. So they did well there. And they also weren't an underdog versus the Ravens. I think that's kind of interesting. But regardless, 5-0 in games that they were expected to lose. The Chiefs, they're 10-4-1 versus the spread when they are favored. So they lost 4 games in games that they were favored. Interesting. Since the New England Patriots defeated the Rams in Super Bowl 36, the team that wins the turnover battle in the Super Bowl is 11-3. So look out for that early in the game. If there's some early turnovers, more than likely that team that gets the turnovers, obviously, is going to win the game. There is no bigger factor in football, especially in the NFL, than turnovers deciding the game. And we'll get to the other big thing that determines games, early down success rate, which I think is going to be a major factor in this game. The teams in the last 20 Super Bowls, when having more sacks than their opponent, are 12-4. So if your team, the 49ers or the Chiefs, sack the other quarterback more times, you are 12-4, more likely to win the game by a large margin. And that's not always the case because I guess that's always mostly the case. I don't know if that's like a chicken before the egg scenario, because if you are sacking the opposing team's quarterback, that could mean you're winning the game more often than you're losing the game, just based off the statistic itself. But that could also mean you get these sacks early. But I thought that was an interesting statistic nonetheless. The other statistic that I think is very interesting is that teams going into the Super Bowl that had 55 sacks in total over the course of a year were 6-0. So San Francisco had over 55 sacks in total, regular season playoffs. Going into the Super Bowl, those teams are 6-0. Kansas City did not reach that margin or that mark. San Francisco did. So San Francisco is in line with the teams recently that have been able to sack quarterbacks at a high rate. That includes the Giants teams that beat the Patriots. That includes, I believe, the Steelers team. That includes the Eagles, I think. There's quite a few teams over the year, or the last decade or decade plus, last 20 Super Bowls. So it's a relatively recent trend of teams that have been able to sack the quarterback more efficiently and often. Those teams often go on to win the Super Bowl when they're in it. So, okay, let's go to the matchup itself. So San Francisco's offense, Kansas City's defense. I'm going to take down this spread and throw up the name tag. There we go. So San Francisco's offense, Kansas City's defense. This is not the more interesting matchup of the two, but it might be the matchup that does determine the actual outcome of the game more so than the flip side. I know that everybody's excited to see Mahomes versus Sherman or Mahomes versus Nick Bosa in this front, but I think the more interesting side of the football that could dictate the outcome of the game is going to be this side of the football. Now, because I'm a Patriots fan and I'm an absolute lunatic, I went back into my mind and thought how each team could prepare as if they were Bill Belichick. As I always do, I always look through the lens of the game. What would Bill Belichick do? WBBD. And Bill Belichick, obviously being the greatest coach of all time, you know, I think you should look at the way that he would approach the game. So that being said, how would Bill Belichick attack the Kansas City defense? And also, how would he prepare for this game? So Kyle Shanahan is really in an interesting spot here. I think that San Francisco should, to compare it to a New England game plan, should take the New England versus Peyton Manning approach. And what do I mean by that? I think that San Francisco should have long, sustained drives where they try and keep Mahomes on the sidelines and intentionally keep him sipping Gatorade so that he has less time with the football. Now, I know that Mahomes and the Chiefs are not a team that necessarily need a lot of time to score a lot of points, but I do think that in a course of a Super Bowl where there's long quarter breaks, there's a long halftime show, there's a lot of waiting around, there's all the commercial stuff that goes on. You get very antsy if you're on the sideline, and the team with possession of the football, obviously in football, is going to win more often than not, but the team specifically in the Super Bowl, I think, has a major edge, the one that can hold on to the football for a longer period of time because of all the extra things that go into the Super Bowl. And I do believe that if you're going to beat Mahomes, you want to limit his possessions and limit his time with the football. And I think that comes down to a core fundamental philosophy that San Francisco needs to take into this game, which is he's Peyton Manning, we're the Patriots, and we need to keep the football away from Peyton Manning, and we need to keep him sipping Gatorade. So the Chiefs, what I found interesting about this game plan is they allowed the most plays per drive this season. So the Chiefs, even though their defense has been improved this year, and even though their defense has played very well at times this year, they actually, on average, allowed the most plays per drive this season, which means they were on the field for the most plays in a given drive on average. And they also had the third most time of possession allowed. So San Francisco, statistically speaking, should be able to hold on to the ball for a long time and should be able to run a lot of plays versus Kansas City, because that's exactly what happened versus Kansas City. Now, you also have to take into account that, like I said, Kansas City is a team that often scores quickly when they do score, and that means that Kansas City's defense is on the field for longer. But that being said, Kansas City is not going to change the approach that they play. They want to play fast. They want to up the tempo. And if you're San Francisco, you need to reverse that. You need to play slow tempo, and you need to keep the football and go for a lot of plays. And obviously, you want to score as quickly as possible. But I think with San Francisco, and you're not going to just lie down if you have a wide open touchdown. But what I'm trying to say here is you want to keep the possession, because you want to force Kansas City to be in rush mode, to be in come from behind mode, even though they've been so successful in that regard as of late. Now, a big key in this game, I think, for Shanahan will be his play calling in general, but I think it will be the play calling in the first two downs. Because I think where San Francisco has the major advantage is in those first two downs of play calling, and I think Kansas City might be the better team on third down or have the advantage on third down. Now, I think if San Francisco can avoid third down, I think they will win this game. I think they need to attempt to come in with a game plan where they're playing CFL football, first down in two downs. So I think whoever wins this game on the early downs, specifically on this side of the football, will win the game. I think depending on the play calling and the schemes on both sides, I think it's going to be interesting to see how this comes to be, basically. So Spagnuolo versus Shanahan. Now, when they get into the red zone, I find it interesting. San Francisco is only 21st in the red zone this season. Kansas City is 9th on defense. So if Kansas City is in the red zone, they were good versus Tennessee. They were mostly good versus Houston in their red zone defense. Kansas City has done a good job of really limiting the points and making the opposing team kick field goals, which I think also is going to come into play for Kyle Shanahan, because I think he's going to try and go for fourth downs more often than not when he does get the opportunity to. So look out for that. Now, a big question on everybody's mind is, can Jimmy G step up? I think that's on everybody's mind. A lot of people are saying, Jimmy G isn't the guy. He can't do it. He can't pass versus Kansas City. He can't be the guy to win the Super Bowl because this team only runs the football. I've heard that a lot, and it's almost like annoying at this point. When I look at Jimmy G, I don't think he's the best quarterback in the league. I don't think he's a top 10 quarterback in the league, but I do think he's a good quarterback. And some statistics that will show you that he is a good quarterback and that he can step up in big situations. First off, he had multiple fourth quarter comebacks. He had multiple game-winning drives this season. Look at the Saints game. Look at the Rams game, for example. Seahawks game. Some of the biggest games of the 49ers season, Jimmy G played his best in, which I find very interesting. And also going back to his days even with New England, me knowing kind of what the player he was. I really liked him because of his ability to step up to the occasion. And I think Jimmy G is a quarterback that does play better when the lights are brighter. Now, statistics to show you that when trailing, Jimmy G is actually first in yards per attempt and second in passer rating. Now, it's not a huge sample size because the 49ers only played 175 snaps when trailing this season, which isn't a lot, but first in yards per attempt, so he's throwing for deep plays down the field, and he has a really good passer rating, so he's not throwing interceptions when they're down, he's being more effective, and that's really good. You know, that's clutch time. And I think another thing to show is that when the 49ers have needed to pass to win the game because their running game isn't as effective or maybe they're trailing, Jimmy G, 7 games with 250 plus yards. They're 7-0. So Jimmy G has won every game this year when he's needed to step up and throw for 300-ish yards. They've been able to, and they've won the game. So for people out there saying, you know, I don't think Jimmy can do it, I don't necessarily know if it's Jimmy who can't do it. I think it might be the fact that I think we'll get into it. I do feel like the 49ers offense is not as good as a unit when they're put in situations where they have to pass, because that's not the type of offense that Kyle prefers to run. But I don't think that is all on Jimmy. I do think that's a way for Kansas City to be effective, but I think that's going to take a lot for them to do because it's so difficult to force the 49ers into a position where they're only having to pass from the shotgun or only having to look deep down the field for their passing plays. That doesn't happen unless they're losing by 20 plus points early in this game. That's likely not going to happen. Now, looking at the matchup between Shanahan and Spagnuolo, Shanahan is 5-1 in those games. His worst game came with 34-year-old Donovan McNabb when in Washington. If you watched my Kyle Shanahan video, I appreciate you, but you would hear that what the players he had on Washington, they weren't very good, and McNabb was pretty bad when he was in Washington, if you don't remember. Also, go check that video out if you haven't already. In those games versus Spagnuolo, his offenses 8.7 yards per attempt. That's very good. I would say anything over 8 is considered very good. 4.3 yards per carry is pretty solid. I don't think that's excellent, but solid. And 24 points. Again, solid. And I do think Shanahan this team is a lot more talented than the teams he's had in the past, but also the Chiefs, you know, or I would say Spagnuolo, this defense kind of lines up on average with the defenses he's had. I think he's had some better defenses. He had some worse defenses, but they're about in the middle. I do think that Kansas City is one of the better defenses, Spagnuolo, in terms of talent that he's had, but I don't think it's like the best. And I don't think this is the best offense Shanahan's ever had, but it's one of the best. Now, Spagnuolo does have experience in the Super Bowl as a coordinator, and so does Shanahan. Now, Shanahan did a great job game planning versus the Patriots, who had the #1 defense in 2016, but also Atlanta had one of the best offenses of all time. So it's hard to take into account, you know, how amazing he was. But he was great in the first half, and the Patriots offense was steamrolling the Atlanta defense in the second half, and some courses of events happened, and it was unfortunate what happened to Atlanta. I personally think, now this is hot take city because I think some people blame Shanahan for the loss. I think he made the right calls. I think the execution was poor, and I think New England was just better. That's period, end of story. I don't think that they did anything particularly bad. Now, maybe they could have ran the ball one play and kicked the field goal, but I feel like that's still very conservative, and New England could have still won the game regardless. But I will say that Spagnuolo, when he's reached the Super Bowl, I mean, he had one of the best game plans in Super Bowl history in Super Bowl 42. So this guy, he comes up in the big moment in the past versus the best offense ever and has one of the best performances for a defense ever. Now, he doesn't have that defense that he did in 2007, but if he can have a similar game plan or a similar great game plan like he did then Spagnuolo, you know, you should have faith in Spagnuolo that he's not just going to get out-coached completely. I think this is why this is such an interesting matchup, even though he's kind of struggled versus Shanahan in the past, which was what makes it so interesting. Now, and also Shanahan wants to redeem himself for the end of Super Bowl 51. Now, I think the big matchup everyone wants to know is, will San Francisco be able to run on Kansas City? Well, stats would say yes. I mean, when you look at the stats, San Francisco's second in yards per game. They're second in yards per attempt. And when you look at Kansas City's run defense, 29th ranked in DVOA, 28th in yards per attempt, 26th in yards per game. It's not very good. But they've been better lately. I mean, they only allowed 89 yards to the Titans, who Derrick Henry is steamrolling everybody. But I do think part of that was because they were losing and they had to pass, and they only got, I think he only had 3 or 4 carries in the second half. So part of that is not necessarily the Chiefs' defense, it's more the Chiefs' offense, which we'll talk about later. But the Texans, they also did a great job versus the Texans. So I was trying to look through like any trend that came up, but it was really difficult for me to figure anything out. I mean, Henry only had 3.6 yards per carry. The schemes are different, though. I do think the 49ers will have more success than the Titans did. I do think the 49ers can run for over 100 yards in this game. And I think if they do, that's going to go a long way to making this game. They're going to score points if they do. I don't necessarily know if that means they're going to win, though. I don't know for sure. But I will say I think the scheme of Shanahan and all the little things that they do is much more complicated and complex and tougher to defend than the Titans. Especially a Titans team who was coming off 2 hard battles in a row, a running back who had like 60 carries up to that game and probably was run down and tired. And the 49ers are not going to be out of the game most likely the way that the Titans were, so that it would take Henry out of the game. But I don't think that Kansas City will get completely steamrolled the way the Packers did, or even at times the Vikings did. I do feel like Kansas City is a better defense in that regard than those two teams were, and do stand a better chance at defending San Francisco, even though the numbers would say throughout the season that they are worse than those teams. Maybe Green Bay was worse, but it's hard to know. So, looking at some of the other key statistics, I have so many, it's crazy, but looking at Kansas City's defense, they were really good in terms of not allowing deep passes. I think they're the best team defensively as a secondary, not allowing passes past the sticks in a completion percentage sense. So any passes 10 plus yards past the sticks, Kansas City has been really, really good facing those passes. Now with San Francisco, they are also interesting because Jimmy G has really feasted with a low percentage of deep passes, yet being the most effective in that regard. So Jimmy G, even though he doesn't throw a lot of deep passes down the field, 49ers and Jimmy throws a lot of short passes, but they're the most effective team when they do decide to go down the field, and that's because they're often off of play action. No quarterback threw more play action passes at a higher rate than Jimmy G, 31% of his passes. The lowest depth of target this season for a quarterback, yet the only quarterback to reach 8 yards per attempt. Then you look at the leading percentage in yak. So Jimmy G's yardage had the most yards coming off of yards after catch. So I think that's a big matchup in this game is Kansas City going to tackle well? Are they going to come up and defend these runners? Because like I said in that Shanahan video, he's made an offense that is all about what you can do with the ball in your hands. Deebo Samuel, Emmanuel Sanders, Raheem Mostert, Tevin Coleman, Matt Breida, George Kittle. All of these guys are very good after the catch, and that's probably their strength as a passing game. Kansas City ranked 29th in defending teams after the catch. So San Francisco does have the advantage there. But if Kansas City can come up and stop and defend better in that regard, they have a major chance. Because like I said, early downs will be key. So let's say Jimmy G throws a 5-yard pass on first down to Kittle. Let's say, play action maybe. I don't know. Probably going to happen at least once or twice, right? If Kittle breaks that first tackle and makes that 5-yard catch a 10-yard catch, I think San Francisco, and that happens more often than not, San Francisco is going to be in great spot here. But if Kansas City is able to limit that 5-yard gain, which stats say they're not very good at, then I do feel like Kansas City can win the game very easily. Something also San Francisco does is they are very quick to throw the ball. They're 7th quickest snap to throw in football. Now, the big key here for Kansas City's defense, I think, is going to be the players in the middle of the field. Tyrann Mathieu, Daniel Sorensen, Hitchens, their linebacking play in general, Wilson, and specifically Tyrann Mathieu. I think Tyrann Mathieu is going to have to be probably borderline MVP in this game if San Francisco's offense is going to be ineffective, right? If Kansas City's defense has a fantastic historical performance, it's because Tyrann Mathieu was the best player in this game. And the reason I say that is because San Francisco, the number one thing they want to do in the passing game is target the middle of the field. The Chiefs, because of Tyrann Mathieu, ranked number 1 in defensive DVOA on passes over the middle of the field. Short, middle of the field passes. Tyrann Mathieu is usually the robber in the middle of the field. If he's not covering people man on man, he's that robber in the middle of the field, playing zone, trying to pick passes off in the middle of the field. And I think his instincts and ability to prepare for this offense and be able to instinctually tackle, make plays on the ball, and break up passes is going to be absolutely huge. I also think that Spagnuolo is going to have to flood the middle of the field in a similar way that he did back in 2007 versus the Patriots to take away guys, to take away those type of players. So I think it's going to be Mathieu. He needs to have a huge game, and maybe even Sorensen as well, who's been playing better as of late. I don't think he's like an upgrade over Thornhill, but he's been playing solid in replacing him. Now, something interesting about Mathieu is that he pretty much plays everywhere. I mean, he plays slot corner, he plays free safety, he plays strong safety. No safety was asked to cover wide receivers more often than Mathieu. And among all of the safeties, he actually was 7th in yards per target and had the second most passes defense. So he does make a lot of plays on the ball. He's been an all-pro this year. He's been a fantastic player. And just remember Tyrann Mathieu. If they have a good game, if Kansas City wins, Tyrann Mathieu will be a big part of it. Now, I think one major issue and something that San Francisco could exploit is the running back matchup in the passing game. And this is why I think Tevin Coleman will be the main running back for San Francisco. I think this because Kansas City ranked 32nd in defending running backs in the passing game. They played some games where they played Aaron Jones, for example, who, by the way, Matt LaFleur came from Kyle Shanahan, under Kyle Shanahan, and he had the best game all season versus Kansas City. And Kansas City ranked last in defending running backs in the passing game. Tevin Coleman is the primary pass catcher. Matt Breida a little bit, but Raheem Mostert less so. So I do believe that Tevin Coleman will be the guy more often than not on most downs. And I think Mostert will be second, Breida third. But that's just my opinion on how they'll split their running back usage in this game. So I think a lot of Tevin Coleman props should be good to take, especially catches or some sort of receiving prop would be smart to take. But I do believe that Tevin Coleman will have a big game in the passing game, and I think that Kyle will have plays to attack the linebackers and that matchup in the passing game. Kansas City also ranked 28th versus tight end, which we know is not a good thing when you play San Francisco because George Kittle is the best tight end, or if he's not, he's second. So he's really, really good, and that's not a good thing. And I also wonder who are they going to... Kansas City plays more man than San Francisco does, so they're more of a matchup-based defense. I do wonder what Spagnuolo's plan will be, but like I say, I do believe that it needs to be to pack the middle of the field and force Jimmy on passing plays to throw outside, or just more often than not, your play calls packing the middle of the field. The difficult part of that is that San Francisco uses so much motion to maneuver their offense in ways that they can attack the middle of the field and maneuver your defenders around to take them out of the middle of the field because Kyle's so smart. And then also their primary run play is outside zone. So if you try and pack your defense in the middle, you're going to allow outside zone. So it's kind of pick your poison. Do you allow Kittle and do you allow Samuel and Sanders to get open over the middle of the field, or do you take away the outside zone run play? So I don't think you can take away both every single play. That's why Shanahan is so smart, and that's what he does at such a great level. Now, I also think a bad thing for Kansas City's defense is that they're not good versus motion, and this is because their linebackers are their worst part of their defense. The middle of the field defenders moving side to side. So if San Francisco determines to use motion, which they do the most in the NFL, by the way, that will, I think, stress out Kansas City's linebackers because, one, they're not very athletic, and two, I don't think they're very smart compared to the safeties or the corners of Kansas City. I think Kansas City's corners, Kansas City's safeties, they are much better than their linebackers, especially in coverage, obviously. But I think when you're looking back at this game, if San Francisco was getting the ball to Debo, Samuel, Coleman, and Kittle, and less so to, let's say, Sanders and Bourne on the outside, I think that's where they win. So if you see that Bourne and Sanders are leading the 49ers in receiving, I think that means Kansas City probably won the game. But I think if you see that Coleman and Kittle and Samuel were leading the 49ers in receiving, 49ers probably won the game. Because I think that tells you whether or not the outside was being attacked or the inside was being attacked. And why I'm being so over the top on this is because Kansas City was first versus receivers this season all year. Number one over New England, over Baltimore, over San Francisco. They were number one versus wide receivers this year. And not only that, they were top 10 in rating, top 10 in yards per game, top 10 in touchdowns as a secondary. They forced the 5th most interceptions. But Jimmy G, that is his weakness. That's his weakness. He wants to pass over the middle field. Kyle wants to pass over the middle of the field. But Garoppolo is not great at throwing outside the numbers. Now, he only had 94 attempts to receivers outside, so he doesn't even do it very often. But he ranked 25th in the league on those attempts in expected points added. And then he also ranked worse than Mitchell Trubisky, who was the only quarterback to produce a lower number of expected points added, but he had a higher success rate. Mitchell Trubisky had a higher success rate on throws outside the numbers than Jimmy Garoppolo. So that is why I'm stressing that Kansas City needs to force outside, not inside, on these big passing plays, specifically on third down when you know 49ers are going to pass, right? Because you don't know on first and second necessarily if it's second and 7, they could run or they could pass, right? But if it's third and 8 and plus, you know they're going to pass. They're not going to run that draw every play like they did versus Green Bay, right? So, and that is where you want to try and take away those throws. But why that's also huge, again, stressing this again, Garoppolo led the league in expected points added on throws inside the numbers to the slot, the tight end, or the running back. So this is the game. If Tyrann Mathieu, Daniel Sorensen, these linebackers ball out and maybe they get a pick or they force incompletions in the middle of the field or they just take away the throw, the first read of Garoppolo, Kansas City will win. I also think a guy that San Francisco could target is Fuller. He's been playing a little bit more safety as of late, but he's allowed 130 passer rating. So whoever he is covering, I think you want to attack that guy. You probably want to stay more away from Ward and whoever he's covering. But that's something that Kansas City does do more often than San Francisco is match. So you might see Ward on Samuel or Sanders, and you might see Breeland on Bourne or, I don't know. But Breeland usually plays on the outside. Ward plays kind of both, and then Fuller mostly plays in the slot. So if Fuller is in the slot, I do think that does open up the opportunity for San Francisco to attack the slot if it is man-to-man, because he's been the worst out of all of them. Now looking at the pass protection versus the pass rush, which is also a huge thing on both sides of the ball, but for San Francisco's pass protection versus Kansas City's pass rush, which nobody seems to be talking about, everybody's talking about the opposite side of the ball. Kansas City, this is why I say Kansas City, third down, if they get it to third and it's 3rd and 7+, Kansas City is actually really good in this situation, and San Francisco is not as great. Even though San Francisco ranks 5th on third down, Kansas City ranks 11th. Kansas City has the 2nd best sack rate on third down in the league, only behind San Francisco. San Francisco is 15th in adjusted sack rate, so there's a clear advantage for Kansas City in that regard. So when they're in a clear pass rushing situation, Kansas City should be able to take advantage. Kansas City is ranked 11th in sacks, but they're only 26th in pressure, which this has me thinking that this is why San Francisco can have success early in the down. So if it's first, second down, because Kansas City's only 26th in pressure because they're trying to defend the run, they're not going after the quarterback as much. But when they're allowed to go after the quarterback more often, then they can really get after it. So I think 26th in pressures, that is probably saying that Kansas City, only when they're in a clear passing situation, they're good at rushing the quarterback. So for San Francisco, you want to stay out of those. And for Jimmy G, his rating drops down to 68.7 when he's under pressure. So if Kansas City does get into those situations, they can have success. And again, going back to it, the weakness of the drop back pass game for San Francisco. That is their weakness on offense, if there is one. The pass rushing matchups, Chris Jones and Clark. Those are two players that obviously have the biggest impact on the defensive line for Kansas City. Clark is the right end more often than not, so he'll take on Joe Staley, which I'm intrigued to see if Clark moves to the other side because McGlinchey has been the weakness more often than Staley. McGlinchey has allowed 5 sacks, which is the most of San Francisco's offensive line, and Staley he's been the best offensive lineman for San Francisco as he's been for a majority of his career. So watch out for that as well. If you're watching anything on third down, watch for the middle of the field defense, but also watch for where's Chris Jones and where is Frank Clark? Is Frank Clark on the right? Is he on the left? Is he facing Staley or is he facing McGlinchey? Because I feel like if Clark's facing McGlinchey, he'll have more success than facing Staley. And he has had 6 sacks in 4 games. So he could be a big factor, but we'll have to see what San Francisco's plan is to defend him. I also think Chris Jones, Kansas City will line him up over Person rather than Tomlinson. Tomlinson's a pretty good guard, ranking 20th by PFF. Garland ranks 12th at center, but Person ranks 33rd. So I feel like if Chris Jones is lined up over either side, it will be over the right side rather than the left side, and I think Kansas City can have success there. So, summing up that side of the ball before we go to comments, first and second down. San Francisco, I think, will have success with their play calling, their play action, their motion, their run game on first and second down, which should keep them out of third down and longs. But if they get into third down and longs, that's where Kansas City has the advantage. Kansas City also has the advantage in red zone. I do believe that this is a really good matchup between two great coaches in Spags and Shanahan, but I do give Shanahan the advantage based off both history and based off current production. I do think San Francisco will have this advantage on the offensive side of the ball more often because they'll be able to throw to the tight end, they'll be able to throw to the running back, but they may find it more difficult to throw to receivers in the inside of the field because I think Spagnuolo will do a good job of defending that. But I think where San Francisco will have the most success is running the ball and the play action and the motion plays off of that, which is the key to San Francisco's offense for most games, not only this Super Bowl. So I do expect San Francisco to score over 20 points. I do expect them to get closer to 30 than 20 points in this game. But I do think Kansas City has an opportunity to create pressure on Jimmy and possibly create 1 or 2 turnovers or a couple of sacks in this game that could turn the tide of this game. I don't think Kansas City is necessarily expecting them to shut down San Francisco, but if they can get a couple of big plays and big stops or force field goals, they have an opportunity to win. So that's the sum up of that side of the ball, and take all that information as you wish on that side of the ball. If you have any questions, let me know. All right, let's get to the comments. So guys, if you haven't already, make sure that you do. Let me just find it real quick. Make sure that you do Gronk Spike the like button, and of course subscribe if you are just tuning in for some reason and you've never subscribed. Also guys, if you're already subscribed but you don't have the notification bell turned on, make sure that you have that notification bell turned on because it lets you know when the latest upload is out for the Bottom Line View. You might have not got the Kyle Shanahan video notification, and if you didn't, I don't like you because that's my favorite video that I've ever made. So go check out that video if you haven't already. All right, comments. Guys, let me know your opinion right now. Let's get to those comments and let's look. All right. Damn, a lot of comments. All right, so Zach says, "Hey Mitch, didn't media week start already? Because I missed all the interviews." Yes, it did start. Deshaun said, "I already Gronk spiked the like button." Mitch, thank you, Deshaun. A Human says, "I think the Niners are gonna win, but since I'm a Seahawks boy, I want the Chiefs to win." Vaughn says, "Mahomes MVP, 45-25, Kansas City wins." Doug says, "What's up?" What's up, Doug? A Human says, "Mitch, who do you think is going to be the MVP if the Chiefs win, and who do you think the MVP is if the Niners win?" Well, I'm going to give you the MVP at the end of the game, so I don't want to spoil that, but I will answer for both teams at the end. Chiefs says 34-14. No defense can figure out Mahomes. Kevin Durcan is not a fan of Joe Buck. Awesome Zone says CBS is the best. What else? Coach says it will come down to a mistake. Close call. Let's go Niners. 31-28. Zach says, "I love Troy Aikman and Joe Buck, but they're not better than John Madden and Pat Summerall." Deshaun says, "Who have in Super Bowl 55 in Tampa?" I know it's so early. I have no idea yet. No idea. Kevin says, "Both teams will score over 30 points. The team with the ball last wins in a shootout." Okay. Sean says Kansas City will win by 6. Chiefs Rule says Richard Sherman cannot guard Tyreek Hill. Singh says do not play zone coverage versus the Chiefs. Durkant says play man and keep a 4-man rush. Kevin and Kant says nobody can stop the 49ers pass rush. What jerseys are they wearing? Kansas City is wearing their reds and 49ers are wearing whites. What's up, Van? Thank you for watching. Jonathan says, Niners have the coach of the year, plain and simple, to think he won't dial something up for the offense that will expose Chiefs defense. It's going to happen and expect Mahomes to get put down at least 6 times. Wow, 6. Jonathan also says the Chiefs struggled a little bit this playoffs. The Niners didn't, plain and simple. I also think the AFC is a bit better than the NFC, but that's just my opinion. Not taking anything away from the 49ers, but I do think the Chiefs played better teams. I don't think Green Bay was a real true NFC championship type team. I actually think the tougher game that they played was Minnesota. What's my favorite game this season? That's a good question. Ooh. Viking Saints was good in the playoffs. I don't know, it just came to my mind. Adam Smith says Shanahan's a football genius. Haywood says 34-25 San Francisco. David says 30-24 San Francisco. Haywood says Sherman will travel with Watkins. I don't think he'll travel with anyone, to be honest. We'll see, though. They have been playing more man as of late. Which team will have a big play on special teams? This game is a great matchup. I think more likely than not, which we'll get to, I think more likely Kansas City has a big play on special teams because of Mecole Hardman. Kansas City does have the advantage in returners. Brett says Kansas City's defense can't stop 49ers run game, 36-24. Sherman will get exposed against the Chiefs receivers, says Kevin. Who do I have winning? You'll have to find out at the end. I have only done one side of the football. I know, I've talked a lot about one side of the football, but I'm not done yet. Of anything I said already, what do you guys think is the most telling thing that I said? That you didn't know or possibly you think's interesting about the game? Kevin says, Chiefs rule, Patriots fan wishing Chiefs Nation the best of luck, but don't sleep on Garoppolo. Haywood says, if any dimension of the San Francisco offense struggle, Kyle will take the ball out of their hands. Yes, Kyle Shanahan is the chosen one. Kansas City's a favorite, says Haywood. All right, let's get to the other side of the ball, guys. Keep the comments coming. Thank you guys for being here live. I really appreciate it. Thank you guys for watching all my videos. I appreciate it. No matter how many of you watch the videos, I still appreciate any of you watching the videos. All right. So, you know what? Keep this up. Keep this up. I don't know. Whatever. Keep this up for a while. Okay, let's go to the other side of the football, which is, of course, San Francisco's defense versus Kansas City's offense. Okay, so I gave you the Patriot game plan at the start for San Francisco's offense. The Patriot game plan for Kansas City is pass. Pass even more. This is, I would say, if I had to relate it to a Super Bowl 49. Super Bowl 49 for the Chiefs. That is New England versus Seattle. Seattle, San Francisco, very similar defenses, very similar strengths, even similar players, and the same scheme, pretty much. I honestly think Kansas City, if they didn't, they should have actually looked at those Super Bowls, New England versus Seattle and New England versus Atlanta, because both of those defenses ran very similar schemes, and New England is like better than anybody at attacking those schemes. So I hope Kansas City and Andy Reid looked at those games. But yeah, I think Kansas City run, to be honest, at times. Run on the odd second and short, but pass even more. Because even though San Francisco's strength has been defending the pass, I think that's honestly where they're more susceptible, especially in this game with these matchups. So I do think some things that Kansas City can use to their advantage is tempo, underneath passing, motion, and using their speed to scare San Francisco's corners. And what I mean by that is I think you need to attack Sherman, you need to attack Mosley, you need to attack, who's the other guy that I'm missing? Quan Williams, with the speed of your receivers. So even if you're not always attacking them over the top, you need to make them fear you. Because I don't think San Francisco, they know they can't run with you. So that being said, I think a lot of what Kansas City will do is threat the deep pass, but a lot of it will be, okay, threat the deep pass, come back. Threat the deep pass, out route. Threat the deep pass, curl. You know, it's going to be a lot of deep out route, deep comeback. Things that scare a corner to backpedal and play over the top, but quickly turn back to the football. Because when you're looking at the scheme of the cover 3 match, more susceptible than anything is to play with the curl flat defender, which the curl flat defender is the guy that plays where the curl would be, so plays like the sticks outside over the top, or outside flat. So flat is right immediately at the line of scrimmage, and then up deep down the sidelines. So what you want to do is flood that and attack that area, which is what New England was very good at. They're also very good at kind of messing with the rules of the defense, which Andy Reid has also been very effective at doing this, to get one-on-one advantages. Because I don't know if some of you know this, because everybody just seems like cover 3 match is like pure zone. It's actually not. It's a man zone. So there's like matching rules where guys will become one-on-one. So if Kansas City can figure out some ways, and obviously San Francisco knows mostly all the ways that can beat this defense, which is why this defense is very good. Because when you have a team that's very good at this defense, they know all the ways that you can beat it, and they can adjust to it. Maybe Kansas City will catch them off guard 1 or 2 plays, but once they see it once or twice, they can take it away by doing different things. And I think Robert Saleh has done a good job of adjusting with this defense. And that's why when you just put really good athletes and really good players within this defense, it's going to be a really, really tough defense to beat. But I think if you can figure out a way for those matching zones to get one-on-one with one of these speedy receivers, and you're one-on-one, I think you're done. There's going to be plays where Kansas City has a couple of big plays in this game because of, if they're playing that type of defense more often than not, which they have all year, then Kansas City will be able to get after it in certain plays. Another key I think is interesting is, I got this from Warren Sharp, which he's a very smart football guy, analytics guy. In 3 receiver sets in the red zone, San Francisco ranked last, which I found interesting because Kansas City last at defending it. So Kansas City uses 3 receivers more often than any formation. So they like to have Hardman, they like to have Watkins and Hill all on the field. San Francisco actually isn't very good in the red zone because their receivers are based on speed, and when you're in the red zone, there's less space to burn people with speed, and they're not big, they're fast, they're quick, they're good in space, they're not good with limited space. So that's a really interesting matchup, is San Francisco is not very good in the red zone defensively, and Kansas City is not very good in the red zone offensively. How Kansas City has scored in the playoffs is Mahomes scrambling and creating a play, and Travis Kelce, basically, or Damian Williams running. So how can and how efficient will Kansas City be with their 3 receiver sets for San Francisco? And I think that is going to be a big matchup as well. Now, looking at some of the other key stats and matchups, I think something that really stood out to me right away about this game was obviously the thing everybody is talking about, which is 49ers defensive line versus the Chiefs offensive line, but more on the point of getting after Mahomes or containing Mahomes. So I think the biggest matchup on a pure one-on-one matchup on this side of the ball is Bosa versus Fisher. So Eric Fisher is the left tackle. Nick Bosa plays right end most of the time. Dee Ford plays left end. I think Dee Ford will find it more difficult on his side because he plays Mitchell Schwartz, and Mitchell Schwartz is like the best Chiefs lineman, and he's also probably one of the best right tackles in the league, like top 3. And he doesn't allow a lot of pressure, which is why Mahomes is so good at scrambling to his right, because Mitchell Schwartz is the right tackle. But Bosa is playing Fisher, and Fisher ranked 35th by PFF, so below a starting starting tackle, really. And he is the weakness of the 2 tackles. And I do think if either of the ends has a lot of success, it will be Bosa. But what I think is most interesting about this matchup is the fact that the 49ers already play very wide. They play a wide 9 defensive front by nature. They're not going to be shifting to this throughout this game. They actually play that every game. So what the wide 9 basically is that you have your defensive ends I wish I could draw this, but like you have your defensive ends lined up outside of the tackles. So it basically forces the quarterback to move up in the pocket, and it makes it very difficult for a quarterback to run outside of the pocket. So I think that's why this is such a good defense, a good rush versus Mahomes, because it keeps Mahomes inherently, without doing anything, without changing your defense, without putting in game plan specific things, it actually inherently keeps Mahomes inside the pocket, which even though Mahomes is great inside the pocket, he's not nearly as dangerous as he is when he's on the run. So that being said, I think the way that San Francisco will attack Mahomes is not through their ends. I think they're going to play their wide 9 formation, but those D ends are going to be more like contains, where they just wait and they don't get past Mahomes. They don't let him scramble around or backwards or left or right. They basically control the pocket, and they let Armstead and Buckner, this is why these two guys are going to be huge in this game. I think these two guys will determine whether Mahomes has a 350-yard game or a 200-yard game. Armstead and Buckner could be the difference in this game. If they have massive games with their interior rush versus Mahomes, then the 49ers will win, essentially. Because I think if 49ers come out correctly with Saleh and he says, Bosa and Ford, yes, you can get after the quarterback if you clearly win, but you're going to stay and contain Mahomes on those downs that we know they're going to pass, which is the majority of the time. You're not going to allow Mahomes to get outside the pocket. We're going to let Armstead and Buckner rush freely and get after Mahomes, but we're going to have our 4-man rush so that it's contained on the edge, rush from the interior, and win that way. So I think Bosa and Ford are more going to be there as cleanup guys more than actually winning their matchup and sacking Mahomes. It will be Armstead and Buckner that will be the guys creating the actual pressure, which will then force Mahomes to get sacked by Bosa or Ford, if that makes sense. And this also aligns with the weakness of the Chiefs' offensive line. So the weakness of the Chiefs' offensive line is their interior. You know, as much as I said Fisher is the weakness, he's only the weakness of the tackles. Now, actually, Wiley and Reeder have been 21st and 23rd, center and right guard, I believe, is Wiley, and left guard is Tardif. Tardif is the biggest weakness. He ranked 50th, the doctor, they call him, ranked 50th this year by PFF. So he is the guy that, if anybody gets whooped up front, it's going to be him. And you have two guys that are capable of 10-plus sacks a season with Buckner and Armstead, who've been great this year. That is going to be fascinating to watch. I'm very excited to see it. And I do think teams, when they've been able to get pressure on Mahomes, that's been the way they've been able to do it. Now, San Francisco, why this is so big is because San Francisco doesn't blitz. They blitz 29%, the 29th most, which is third least in the league. And they have the 4th least amount of blitzes this season. So they don't blitz at all. Basically, they never blitz. I don't think they will blitz because I don't think that's the way to attack Mahomes. Because if you blitz, and I'm not going to say that's not the way to attack Mahomes, but I don't think that's necessarily smart if you don't have the corners to do so. And unless you're probably New England, you can't really blitz Kansas City because you don't have the speed at corner or you don't have the cover guys to be able to do that, right? So San Francisco, their corners are solid, but they're not necessarily fast. They're longer guys. They're physical guys. And I think that they're going to play more of their traditional set of defense. It's going to be slightly different, but we'll have to see how they go about it. I obviously don't know, but I'm just saying what I would do. Second in pressure rate and third in sack percentage is San Francisco this year. But Kansas City is 4th in adjusted sack rate. So their offensive line's been really good. And Mahomes is only allowing 3.3% sack rate on third down. So he's been amazing on third down at evading sacks and getting rid of the ball, and guys have been open on third down, and Reed does a great job on third down as well. He's so good, especially on third and short. Like, third and short for either of these teams, that's a win for the offense. I mean, 9 out of 10 times, unless it's a drop pass, Kansas City's going to convert or San Francisco's going to convert, because these play callers are way too good on third and short. It's going to be an automatic first down. So every time you see 3rd and 4 under, it's going to be a first down. I'm just telling you right now. Mahomes has had over 3 seconds to throw in the games versus Tennessee and Houston, which I think is why he's been so amazing. I mean, not only has he had time in the pocket, but he's had time outside the pocket, because Tennessee and Houston both don't have good pass rushes, and they're both very slow. So they can't get Mahomes when he runs around. But San Francisco is the exact opposite. I mean, they're super fast, and they're also way better pass rushers. So I don't expect Mahomes to have an amazing game. And if he does, I think that would be historic. I think it would be amazing, like incredible for Mahomes to be to have one of the best performances in Super Bowl history. I don't think that's going to happen, but I do think he can do enough to win the game. I don't think he's just going to rip the 49ers up to the point where it's like, oh my goodness, if that happens, I think it's because Reed comes up with some concepts and San Francisco doesn't adjust defensively, and they just play the same defense that they've been playing all year, and they just basically get beat schematically, and there's guys wide open, or Hill runs past Sherman, or like things like that have to happen. I don't think it's going to be like, oh my god, San Francisco got torn apart. Because I think San Francisco's pass rush is too good. Like I think there's going to be downs where Kansas City has time and Mahomes has time to throw, but it's not going to be every down like versus Tennessee and Houston, where literally Tennessee and Houston got no pressure. And Mahomes was just balling because it was easy. But Kansas City's first on third down offense, San Francisco's second on third down defense. This is a great matchup. And like I said, I think the advantage goes to both defenses on third down. But I think both offenses will have the clear advantage on early downs. Now, I also did some research with D Ford because I found out that really Kansas City, I wanted to check how San Francisco performed with D Ford and without D Ford, because D Ford came back for the playoffs. They've been a lot better in the playoffs as a pass rushing unit. So they played without Ford for 6 games, right? So they had 9 sacks in total over those 6 games without D Ford. And if you take away that game they played versus Green Bay on primetime Sunday Night Football, they had 5 sacks in that game. They only had 4 sacks in 5 games without D Ford. So when D Ford is in the lineup, this defensive line has been absolutely out of this world good, which he's going to be playing, because not only D Ford is a good player, but he just allows everybody else to be even better, right? And he also allows for another body in the rotation. So I also wanted to take that into account, where San Francisco was trending downward at the end of the regular season, but once they got D Ford back, they were trending up. And their sacks were down at the end of the year, even though their sacks were like huge at the beginning of the year, and their sack rate was way up, way first in the league. But it went down to like third at the end because D Ford wasn't playing. So just know that San Francisco, those numbers at the end of the year don't really dictate what they are now. Like I said, I think that even though Sherman's been great this year, I think there are ways that Kansas City can attack him. And I think specifically just by attacking their corners. Use your speed to attack these guys, because they're not built to defend these type of receivers. They're not built to defend the speedy, short, shifty guys. They're built to defend the A.J. Greens or the DeAndre Hopkins types, right? Or even the Devontae Adams types, not necessarily the Tyreek Hills. Or the Mecole Hardmans, even. I think one player that's going to have a big game is Damian Williams, because often in games like when I talked about New England versus Seattle, big player in that game was Shane Vereen, or New England versus Atlanta. These cover 3 schemes tend to give up the underneath passes a lot, and I do think San Francisco will give up all the underneath passes that Kansas City wants, which I think that's how Kansas City's going to have to live. And I think, honestly, Kansas City's gotten better in that regard, because teams started to just take away the deep passes that they run and the concepts that they like and the vertical concepts that they like. So they just gave away all the underneath things. So I think Damian Williams underneath is going to have a big game. And their underneath patterns, Mahomes is going to have to live with that, and he's going to have to live with quick passes. I don't think you can sit back there and wait for the deep route to open up and then go after that. It might happen a couple times in this game, but not like, you're not going to live with that. You're going to have to live with the 5-yard catch and work after the catch, 3-yard outs, you know, underneath. And San Francisco will live with that, but Kansas City can live with that as well. Because like I said, Kansas City's first on offense on third down, and they're amazing on third and short because Andy Reid is incredible on that down with all he can do with his play calls. So even though San Francisco will force Kansas City to play that way, Kansas City will be fine playing that way, is what I'm trying to say. Now, one question I have about San Francisco is, are they going to just play this defense, or are they going to switch it up? Because I think if teams have had success versus Kansas City, more so it has been, you know, playing man. But that has kind of been proven false as of late, because not every team is the New England Patriots in terms of their secondary. So, you know, that was like a myth, I think, because like the games that people were having success, Tyreek Hill wasn't there. And then the games where Tyreek Hill was there, they were playing the Patriots, which the Patriots had the best secondary in the league. So cover 2 or cover 2 man, are they going to mix some of that in there? Because they don't usually play that a lot. But I do think that would be actually probably trick Mahomes. And I do think it's not like a complex defense, but I do feel like throwing that in there occasionally would be actually really smart for San Francisco to do. Just a little bit of man here and there, a little bit of cover 2, not necessarily, and maybe disguising it so it looks like the cover 3. I think that would be very smart, just to throw that out there. And I am sure they will do that. Now, I do think the number one thing that San Francisco needs to do is they need to play very physical with their corners. I do understand that you don't want to give up the big play, but I do think you need to give time to your pass rush to get to the quarterback. So that being said, I think if there is an advantage, like I said, the advantage for Kansas City is their speed, but the advantage for San Francisco is their size. It's very rare that a secondary has a size and physical advantage on a receiver group, but that's actually the case, right, in this game. So that being said, I think San Francisco needs to beat up Tyreek Hill as much as they can. They need to beat up Mecole Hardman as much as they can. They get called on flags, but I think they need to be aggressive, and I think they need to provide time for Buckner and Armstead and Bosa and Ford to get to the quarterback and press and get physical, get handsy, whatever it may be. I think they need to try that. Now, I went back and talking about this cover 3 match, Seattle scheme, whatever it is. I went back and looked at the record that Mahomes has over the course of his career versus these teams. He's 5-2. He lost one game in Seattle last year, and he lost one game to the Chargers last year. So he was undefeated this year. He played Jacksonville, and LA twice, and he won both those games. Now, but he actually had his worst games of the season versus the Chargers. In both of those games, he was under 200 yards, and in both of those games, he had 1 touchdown and 1 interception. So 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions total this year versus that scheme versus the Chargers. Now, Chargers have a lot of history with Kansas City, Andy Reid, and they understand them because they're a rival. So I'm sure that Saleh and Shanahan looked back at that and said, okay, we're going to take some of the things that they did and try and replicate that. I think also why this is good if you're a 49ers fan is that the Chargers defense is probably the closest to the 49ers in the fact that they have 2 really good edge rushers. They have Ingram and they have Bosa, and I think that that's also a big factor in playing Mahomes because you need that speed on the edge to be able to contain him. So that's interesting. But, like I said, I think Kansas City has the advantage in the red zone. I think Kansas City has the advantage with their receivers in the red zone. That is the weakness of San Francisco. They allowed 17 touchdowns to receivers this season. But San Francisco allowed the least yards per attempt on defense. They allowed the least 20-plus yard passing plays. And they allowed the second least amount of passing yards. They were also the best versus the tight end this year and the second best to the running back. So even though I brought up Damian Williams, they've been very good at tackling because they're very fast. And even though you can pass underneath, they're very good at going to the football and tackling when they need to. So I honestly think Kansas City needs, their best players in this game need to be Watkins, most importantly, because I think they're going to try and take away Hill as much as they can. But I think it's going to be Watkins, Hardman, and Hill. Those 3 guys probably are going to be the biggest factor in the passing game and on offense, other than Mahomes, of course, for Kansas City. Then you have Williams, and probably last Kelsey. I think Kelsey will have the least amount of impact in this game. We'll see, though. He might get a lot of catches, but I don't think they're going to be for a lot of yards. What else we have here? Now, something interesting as well. San Francisco did allow the third most yards per attempt to the quarterback position when running. And we know Mahomes has been scrambling a lot as of late. But I don't expect him to live off that in this game, as the two teams that recently played him played more man, Tennessee and Houston, which allows you to run as a quarterback because the coverage isn't staring at you. You know, they can't see you because they're covering their guy. So it allows quarterbacks to run. But also in that stat, I did consider that San Francisco played Baltimore. They played Seattle twice. They played Arizona twice. They played a lot of quarterbacks that ran. So obviously that number is going to be higher than teams that didn't play quarterbacks that run. Like if you played Tom Brady, it's not going to be 5 yards a carry. You know what I mean? But I do think that Mahomes, maybe a couple scrambles here and there, could be a big factor as well. But again, it's going to be difficult if San Francisco plays properly up front. So the rushing plan is the biggest deal for San Francisco's defense. So summing that up, as I did for the opposite side of the ball. Kansas City-wise, pass more, use tempo to wear down the defensive line. I didn't really bring that up, but use tempo early, go to the line quickly, make San Francisco communicate, use a lot of motion to get good matchups in the match zone, and use a lot and attack their corners with your receivers. The receivers need to play well, which I think they will. Use 3 receiver sets in the red zone, and avoid third and long, which most teams want to do regardless. But pass on early downs, pass short, and if you need to get in third down, get in third and short. For San Francisco's defense, I think you need to be a little different at times. But I think the biggest thing for them is the rush plan. The biggest thing for them is keeping Mahomes in the pocket, tackling Armstead and Buckner, and really playing what they play, but just having a couple wrinkles here and there. I don't think it's going to be overly complex for them. So that's basically the sum up on both sides of the ball. Now, for special teams, Coach brought this up earlier. Robbie, I just call him Robbie now. I just know him by his first name. He's a one-name guy. You know, Kobe, Robbie, all right? 13 of the last 13 when he kicked field goals. 13 of the last 13. Butker was 11 of the last 11. So both kickers have been amazing as of late. And I don't think there's an advantage either way. I think it's not easy to kick in Miami, but it's not difficult either. But I do think the returning advantage goes to Mecole Hardman. One last factor I thought about was Kansas City's been trailing in all of these games in the playoffs. So that being said, that means that Andy Reid had to use more of his Rolodex in terms of his plays and go deeper into his plays that maybe he didn't want to necessarily show if he didn't have to. And Shanahan has been winning in all these games, and last game they just ran every play. So, like, he hasn't had to show a lot of, like, the things that maybe he could show in the Super Bowl. So I do feel like, from a play calling perspective, San Francisco could probably call some things that we haven't seen all year, when Kansas City's probably used everything to this point where, not necessarily everything, but most of what we're going to see in the Super Bowl, we've already seen from Kansas City. While with San Francisco, I still feel like they have a few tricks up their sleeve from a play calling perspective because they haven't been desperate. You know, we haven't seen all their trick plays. We haven't seen all their passes. We haven't seen all their screens. I think there's things that we're going to see that we haven't seen yet. At the end of the day, my final prediction, this game's going to be awesome. I still really don't know, to be quite honest with you. But I do think that the game that most often would happen between these two teams, which is my ultimate prediction, will be that San Francisco wins in a close, high-scoring football game, 30-27, 31-27. I have it 30-27. Maybe last drive, maybe a last drive stop. I don't know. I think that it's going to be that Jimmy G sets up a game-winning field goal for San Francisco, and Jimmy G gets the Super Bowl MVP. So I have the 49ers winning by 3 points, covering the spread. I would take San Francisco because I think they're going to win the game. But I think the difference is going to be that San Francisco's defense, their pass rush, will make more plays. And I think that San Francisco offensively will be able to keep possession of the football for longer and have success with their running game enough to be effective with their play action. And I do think Jimmy G is going to have a really good game. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that Jimmy G has a really good game. I also think Mahomes has a good game, but I don't think it's going to be like as special as he's been the last couple of games. I think San Francisco is the better all-around team. I think Kansas City, if they win, it's going to be in a shootout like 38-34. And another way that they could win is turnovers. If Jimmy throws a couple picks or they fumble or kick return, or if Kansas City gets that and they get the momentum early, it's going to be difficult for San Francisco to come back. But I also think if San Francisco gets the lead early and Kansas City falls behind like they have the last couple of games, they're not going to win. I don't think this is a team you can beat like that because San Francisco is built to win like that. They want to run. They want to pass rush. You're not going to beat them like you beat Tennessee and Houston because Tennessee and Houston didn't have the pass rush to beat you, didn't have the secondary to beat you, didn't have the defense to beat you, and they didn't have the run game like San Francisco does, and they don't have the play caller that San Francisco does. So don't count on a comeback, Kansas City fans. I know that's been there for you, but don't necessarily count on it as much as you have. So I think this game could go either way. I think it will be a very entertaining game, very fun game. But at the end of the day, if I had to pick one and I had to put money on one, which I am putting a little bit of money on it, I do have San Francisco winning the game. I just think they've been the better team all year. I think they're the better all-around team. They have the better defense. And even though Kansas City's offense is better than San Francisco's offense, I do think there are things that San Francisco can do that take advantage of the weaknesses of Kansas City's defense. So at the end of the day, Jimmy G, Super Bowl MVP. If there is a Super Bowl MVP, you know it's going to be Mahomes. It's going to be Mahomes for Kansas City if they win it because the NFL wants to give it to Mahomes, even if it's not Mahomes. Like, let's say it's Tyrann Mathieu. Let's say it's Travis Kelce or Tyreek Hill or even Damian Williams. They're going to give it to Patrick Mahomes because we know why. I mean, come on. He's a quarterback, and he's like the guy that they want to be basically in Tom Brady's place. So, the face of the NFL. So, it's going to be Mahomes. And that's not trying to slight Mahomes, even if, again, I think he's going to play well. But I'm just saying, it's going to be Mahomes. All right. There we go. That's my pick. Let's get to the comments one last time. For basically, the 2019-2020 season. And then I'm going to be doing a live stream for the Super Bowl on Sunday. I'm probably going to have John on there. Not 100% sure. And maybe one or two more people. We'll have to see. John of Hot Take Hockey. We'll have to see, though. I haven't exactly made the plans 100%, but we'll have to see. All right. So, I need some water or something. Adam says Moser is a beast. Zach says, Mitch, do you know who Ed the Strangler Lewis is, and do you think he's a Hall of Famer? I think you've answered this question before. Yeah. Do you think Tiki Barber, Warwick Dunn, and Darren Woodson are Hall of Famers? Tiki Barber is the closest. Oh, actually, Darren Woodson probably. I think Woodson will get in. I think Barber has a better chance than Dunn. Dunn is not a Hall of Famer. I think Barber probably won't get in, but he has a better opportunity than Dunn. Okay. What else? So, Chiefs Rule says some people don't get that Mahomes is better than Jimmy G. I think most people get that. Kevin Urquhart says some people don't get that the 49ers are better than the Chiefs in everything but quarterback. I don't know about everything, but they're certainly not better at receiver. Kevin Urquhart says, is Drew Brees better than Jimmy G? Is Russell Wilson better than Jimmy G? Russell Wilson certainly is, and Drew Brees, yeah, still is better, but not by a lot. Not by as much as you guys think. Just going to say that. I think, let's put it this way. I think if Jimmy G passed last game versus the Packers, if they decided to pass, they would have won. They just decided to run. Where was I last time I answered these? Best game was Patriots-Dolphins. Both head coaches deserve a Super Bowl, yes. Unfortunately, I think that's the worst part of this game, that one of these coaches has to lose. Because I'd like to see both of these coaches win. Doug says he's taking the alternate spread, 49ers by 12.5. Wow. $17 points for the Chiefs. I think that would be pretty awesome performance from San Francisco's defense. Could happen, but I think it would have to take a lot. I think if San Francisco wins by double digits, it's more likely going to be like 40-24 or something like that. Singh says, Mitch, do a video about your top 10 teams without winning a Super Bowl and do some research. It's not a bad video. Ultra says Niners 31-29. See you tomorrow, John. Ultra says the 49ers are a better team. Mahomes is the best player. The best teams win. Eagles were the best team. Brady was the top player. Newton was the best player. Broncos were the best team. Interesting thing, though, Mahomes doesn't have the MVP curse, Ultra. Just remember that. He does have the Madden curse, though. Yeah, D Ford's GOAT, basically what I'm saying. Adrian said D4 will be lined up off sides. That would be so funny if that happened, but it would suck for D Ford. What quarterback was the most successful versus 49ers? Drew Brees, I believe. Thank you, party. Jimmy G will be the new face. Somebody said. Keep calm. Kevin says, which defense is better at covering the other team's tight ends? San Francisco. Actually, the interesting thing is San Francisco is at the top of the league at covering tight ends and running backs, and Kansas City's at the bottom. Yes, I'm still live. Do I think Brady will stay with New England? Yes, but I did make a video on places that he could go if he leaves. So check that video out. Kev has the Chiefs 36-7. All right. I think that's everything. So, prediction, 49ers. Oh, I got to give you the results for the vote earlier. Let's check it out. %56% for the 49ers, 44% for the Chiefs, guys. There you go. There you have it. 245 votes. You guys voted on it. 49ers 56%, Chiefs 44%. So most of you guys agree with me. But like I said, it should be close. And I could see the Chiefs winning as well. So there you go. Interesting. All right. Thanks, guys, for joining me tonight for the Super Bowl 54, Super Bowl LIV, Super Bowl LIV prediction. It's been Mitch. If you guys haven't already, subscribe to the channel. And Gronk spike the like button. Peace.